Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our last episode on the Why Polygyny series. Today I will attempt to summarize all the previous points presented in the 9 videos prior to this one. And bear with me, this might be a bit cumbersome because it will be in summary. If you find that you are not able to understand where I'm really coming from with these points, you're welcome to go back to the 9 videos, and in those 9 videos, I elaborate more on any of these points. Okay, so let's dive in. I've written a summary also of the previous 9 videos so that I can stay on track, because it's quite a mouthful, quite a lot to discuss. So firstly, we mentioned that polygyny is a system of marriage where one man has several wives or several partners, long-term partners, female partners, to be more specific, because we do have marriages these days between men and men. So in this video series, I discuss polygyny from the Abrahamic monotheistic tradition. And but before we go into polygyny, I first set out to define marriage in terms of this Abrahamic monotheistic tradition. Okay, I then go on to discuss polygyny from a biological, sociological, spiritual, moral, and emotional perspective. So those are all the things I cover in the video series. Firstly, what I emphasize is that within the religious construct or the Abrahamic traditions, marriage is defined around 3 basic principles. Okay, the first one is to accommodate the innate need to pair bond based on sexual attraction. So God, in his infinite wisdom, created mankind in pairs, male and female, and placed between them a natural predisposition towards sexual attraction. So they are sexually attracted to each other. This is obviously there for a reason. Marriage accommodates the expression or the lawful expression of this attraction and the responsible expression of this attraction. So that is the first principle on which marriage is based in the monotheistic tradition. The second function of marriage was to protect women and children. Obviously, the act of having sexual intercourse naturally results in having children, and so marriage as an institution was there to protect both the woman and children, mainly because men are then defined as having to provide for and look after these women and children. The third function of marriage is to enforce the propriety of the husband over the wife, thereby giving him the right to lay claim to the children. So propriety was very important in the Abrahamic tradition. That is, that the man, when he does take a woman to himself, this woman becomes his woman, meaning that she's not able to go outside or beyond that relationship, but also meaning that he can without doubt lay claim to the children. By him laying claim to the children, it ensures he's their right over him as a father. So fatherhood, in other words, is born out of the man's sense of propriety over the woman, which is enforced, of course, by the monotheistic Abrahamic tradition. So that's where we are coming from. When we talk about marriage, when we are talking about marriage, we are talking about marriage in the Abrahamic construct of the word. Okay, and then also just on a side note, nikah in Arabic, the concept of marriage in Islam is not equivalent to the concept of marriage in the modern sense of the word, or the English word marriage, just on a side note. So let us go into it then. Firstly, with polygyny, we highlighted the biological differences between men and women. Okay, there are many biological differences. We are not going into them in the summarized version. All we are going to focus on is that The main biological difference, okay, between men and women relates to the fact that women fall pregnant and give birth to children. Okay, so what does this essentially mean? That women fall pregnant and carry the burden of having to give birth to children. How does that translate into or relate to polygyny? Okay, what it essentially means is because the gestation period of a child growing in the womb of the mother is 9 months before she gives birth, one man can feasibly meet the biological function of impregnating hundreds of women within the same time it takes for one woman to birth one child. Okay, so again, one man can feasibly meet the biological function. If the biological function of sex is to impregnate a woman, one man can do the job basically. Okay, in the same time it takes one woman to give birth to one child, the same man, can impregnate scores of other women. So given this fact, it is inconceivable to believe that men are monogamous by design. Okay? Women are monogamous by design, men are polygynous by design, essentially. So that is one of the main, the underscoring biological fact regarding why polygyny is the natural order for the human species. Next, we find that women are often attracted to established men who are already married. Okay, so while this is something most women will deny because it is rather embarrassing to admit, the fact is that married men are a safer bet. Okay, why is a married man a safer bet? When engaging with a single man in the hope of marriage, there is no telling what type of husband or father the man may become. It is like hiring someone for the most important job in your company who doesn't have a track record, hoping that with time he will grow into his new role. Some women simply don't want to take that risk. Okay? Why take that risk when another woman, his current wife, already vetted him for you? To add to it, women are attracted to virile men because biologically they want men who can shoot straight. A man with kids and a responsible or a reasonably happy family is proof that he is not only capable of impregnating women, but that he is capable of looking after and raising a family. So secretly, women find married men more attractive. We find this to be true even outside of the realm of a woman actually witnessing the man having children and having a wife. Simply men who wear a ring on the finger, on the wedding finger, report that they are more popular with the woman. Even those vile men who basically are looking to pick up women wherever they go, sometimes pretend to be married in order to assist their game, right? The next point we highlighted was in relation to the demand and supply theory, which we find in economics. And I emphasize that both men and women are commodities in the sexual marketplace. Commodities, you heard me right? So because they are commodities in the sexual marketplace, we spoke about free love and the fact that women are partly due to modern contraception allowed to engage in with as many sexual partners as they like. So what happened here is that after the era of chastity, which created a scarcity or an artificial scarcity of women because men had to work that much harder to secure a mate in the period of chastity, since women were chaste and men had to commit to actually secure a woman. When the deregulated sexual marketplace started to gain traction, we find that men no longer need to work as hard to gain a mate. Women are freely available. Because women are freely available, it creates a surplus. Since there is a surplus, it devalues the worth of women. So women become less valuable in terms of the demand and supply theory. That is because of the lack of chastity. Chastity being a construct that is reinforced by patriarchy and by extension, chastity is a construct that is reinforced by polygyny. So in other words, the migration from polygyny to monogamy naturally led to the next logical step, which is promiscuity and eventually homosexuality. So that is kind of the trajectory that we are on. Okay, we move from polygyny to monogamy. Monogamy leads to promiscuity. Promiscuity leads to homosexuality. That's kind of the point I argue. If you want to get into more detail, go ahead and watch the previous videos. So the scarcity of woman was reinforced by chastity. Chastity created valuing the woman as higher, meaning adding to her value. One way in which to bring back the value of woman, to increase woman in value, is to practice polygyny, because when men have to actually marry women to be with them, and they are given the option of marrying more than one woman, it protects the chastity of the society, because the majority of women would then be spoken for. Since the majority of women would be spoken for, more men would be competing for a diminishing number of women, which means these women would be able to choose their mates more appropriately and not have to settle for someone they actually don't want, which means they will be able to practice their natural hypergamy, okay, on account of polygyny, that is. Then we go on to try and address the emotional problems in polygyny being very difficult to practice. Women feel extremely jealous of each other. It's natural to feel that way, and it's often difficult for them to keep that in check. How do we solve that problem? Okay, so here we look at what happiness actually means in human society for human beings. How does happiness work, right? I posit here that happiness is relative to one's experience, meaning that, and also further, that happiness is fleeting. It's a fleeting notion, right? For example, I give an example as a coffee drinker. I love coffee, and having a decent cup of coffee is obviously an enjoyable experience for me. However, if I overindulge in coffee and I become addicted to coffee, I find that the same effect that caffeine has on me initially, becomes, worn off over time, and then the experience is just not that good anymore. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to cycle myself off coffee so that I can, get rid of the caffeine immunity syndrome when I'm overindulgent, and then I can start enjoying coffee again, or coffee would become more enjoyable again, okay, by not overindulging in coffee itself. So what I basically am pointing out is that we experience life in cycles of joy and misery. And if you don't want to embrace the pleasure with the pain, you will not be able to really enjoy the pleasure of it. If you only want pleasure and you're not prepared to go through the pain, you will not find enjoyment in life. Okay, people who only live their lives for the next fleeting enjoyment, will tell you how sick they feel after some time when they realize that life is not about fun and happiness, but it's about responsibility. So all things to be enjoyed in the world, every notion of happiness is in contrast to things that are disliked and that make one feel sad. Not only is it naive to expect happiness without toil and struggle, but it is impossible. Polygyny is difficult, as is love and childbirth. Every mother goes through immense pain to deliver a child into the world, yet they do it again and again. Okay, so what I'm basically saying is that all happiness is fleeting, and that the mature are those who embrace the bitterness of heartache with the sweetness of passion. On the emotional and spiritual plane, time stands still in moments of eternal happiness, and the pains that man endures become worth every second with his beloved. Polygyny was less offensive when people possessed more endurance. It wasn't founded in the period of microwave dinners and instant gratification. So if you're thinking polygyny is just, a quick jarib, you're gonna get a woman that you're just gonna have fun with, and that's that. Obviously, that's not even marriage to begin with. Okay, that's not marriage to begin with, and that's definitely not polygyny. Okay, so what about children? Okay, we go on to talk about children, and that is, do children suffer in polygyny? Okay, will it not handicap the children? So here, I admit that probably the biggest argument against polygyny would be in relation to how it could negatively impact children, considering that very often they do not enjoy a close relationship with a father who might be divided or between several households or stretched too thin, basically. Okay, how do we solve this problem? Okay, is that ideal? I posit that children are not wives and don't need to be on a roster. So while a man in polygyny may rotate between wives according to a schedule, this schedule should not be held for his children. Okay, so if there was a strong case against polygamy, then it would be in relation to children. However, men in polygyny should look at setting themselves up so as to maximize the benefit children can derive from their polygynous situation. In that regard, they should set up homes on one property where the children have free access to each other and to their common father. This will also force wives to share in the responsibilities of all the children, even though they don't live in the same house. Having a common area and allowing children free access to all households will help balance the negative effects children face in polygyny. Instead of being deprived from their father, they should not only have free access to him, but also to their siblings from the other mothers. This will minimize rivalry between siblings and will help negate hostility the wives may have towards each other. So this is one of the ways to negate the negative impact that polygyny can have on children, which we admit does exist. And then obviously there's one of the great concerns is the risk of sexually transmitted diseases in having multiple partners. To this end, we advise men to be circumspect regarding who they marry, because marriage is a monotheistic concept. It is under the godly principles of our father Abraham, right? Believers should only marry women who are chaste. Okay, believing men should not marry promiscuous women or women who have a sexual history of promiscuity. They should only marry women who are chaste, either women who were married and stayed loyal to their husbands and so did not sleep around, or women who have never been married and who are virgins. But they should not marry women who are unchaste, because the risk of sexually transmitted diseases are great. If you marry the wrong woman or sleep with the wrong woman, you could transmit the disease to your other wives. That would be immensely irresponsible thing to do. And so what men should do is be circumspect about who they engage with. And when I say engage with, I mean marry. And so as not to open the loop, in other words. So when you are in polygyny, there is a sexual loop. It's a closed loop because it's one man sleeping with several women who are not sleeping with other men. And so it's a closed loop. The minute you introduce someone into that, you bring a woman in who has been sleeping with other men, you open up the loop to those other men that she's been sleeping with, basically, and whatever they might have given her or she might have contracted from them. So aside from that, of course, in today's world, we should be tested for sexually transmitted diseases before we get married to anybody. So that's obviously, on a side note. I imagine that would go without saying, but you still get people who just get married anyway and don't have themselves tested. Myself included, I got married without having myself tested because I got married as a virgin, as were my significant others. So to conclude, polygyny comes with real commitment, honor, integrity, and responsibility. Neither man or woman should enter into marriage without being prepared to uphold the responsibilities that come with it. The three foundational principles of marriage: attraction, protection of women and children, and respecting the propriety of the husband, should be upheld. Since in the Abrahamic tradition, men are appointed as providers and protectors of their families, it follows that they should not burden themselves with more women than they can manage. Marriage is ultimately a responsibility, and in some regards, dare I say, it is a burden. In true monotheistic style, every earthly pleasure comes with its requisite price. It is how God preserves the human spirit, keeps man thankful, and maintains the sacred within the mundane. It is why, though promiscuity may be easy, it not only destroys society, but destroys the spirit. Thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, and share, and add your comments in the comment section. If any one of you want, you want to read the short paper I wrote to summarize the video series, you're welcome to just give a shout out in the comment section, and I'll be happy to share it with you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to your feedback, and thank you very much for watching the series. This concludes our 10-part series on polygyny. Why polygyny? I tried not to over emphasize the role of religion in this sort of series, although I could not obviously downplay the role of religion, especially the Abrahamic traditions. In my next series on polygyny, I would be looking at polygyny more in depth in terms of the texts, first of all the Islamic texts, and look at how the Islamic tradition views polygyny, or the nitty-gritty of polygyny, meaning the details and how to practice it, what to do, what not to do, and etc. But that would be for another day. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.